Opposition parties are supposed to hold government to account and offer new ideas on post-COVID-19 economic, political and social reconstruction. Also, they're expected to act in such a way that the public will perceive them as being able to do a better job if they're in government. Yet, South Africans' opposition parties appear to be struggling to come to terms over what role they need to play in this pandemic that's engulfing the entire world. Those are the views of Wits School of Governance Associate Professor William Gumede. He joins me now to talk about this. Prof, good evening. Of course, it does seem like there is a bit of an identity crisis at the moment because opposition parties, we remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a resounding yes, we're going to rally behind the efforts of government, but things have changed.
Yes, things have changed, so the opposition party started off very well. I mean, at the beginning of the lockdown, they came together as a group and they stood on the steps of Parliament and they made some really good suggestions. I mean, for what governments to be doing. But, along the line, sadly, some fall off the wagon. I mean, some opposition parties, we don't even hear of them anymore. They've just as if they disappeared. Others who have been responding have responded with such, with responses that doesn't make sense. So although, the government is being criticized for its handling right now of COVID-19, and then there's also, of course, the corruption that we're seeing, the opposition parties actually has not taken the opportunities to hold government accountable.
And Prof, how long were we really expecting this kumbaya moment to last? Because they've not been able to agree on even some of the most critical matters facing the country.
Absolutely. I think, this is the moment I think the society needs the opposition parties to stand up and be counters. Of course, some opposition parties are set up really not to be be alternative government, because often one would think the obvious thing for opposition parties is to try to show that if they were in government, they would have done something different and something, much more credible. Now, there are some opposition parties, they set themselves up not to be the alternative government. They just want to be there. You've got smaller parties. All they want to do is they want to, make noise and get their small constituency heard. Other parties just want to be, theatrical. Not really. They don't really make sense, but they criticize. They're loud. So that's understandable. There's some parties that's like that, but there's other parties, like the Democratic Alliance and and the Economic Freedom Fighters who want to be the alternative government. So if they want to be the alternative government, they must come up with policies now that looks different from what the government is doing, and the things must make sense to the wider population. So I think the best strategy forward for the opposition parties is to try to band together, to come together and then, have some kind of joint approach, to tackle the issues that we're struggling with. Now, the opposition parties have done it before. Remember when Jacob Zuma was president, during his time, mismanagement and corruption, the opposition parties actually clubbed together and, at some point, they took government to court, or the president at the time to court. The other time they went to the public protector, and so on. So they were really organized, and they, in their combined organization, helped to put the pressure on former President Jacob Zuma and so on. So they must do the same now because, ordinary citizens need them to stand up for the rights of ordinary citizens.
And when it comes to, the messages that you're saying have been coming out, even the theatricals, the theatrics, as you say, do you think this will be enough to change the minds of the electorate?
No, the theatrics won't be enough. I mean, when I say the theatrics, just think about it. When the Madagascar president came up with, with a kind of herbal mix that he said will, prevent COVID-19. The EFF supported that, So, those type of things that are not credible, it undermines the party, the EFF, its credibility and so on. So that's theatrics. So it's not very serious. Then ordinary citizens can't take it seriously and so on. So what they need to do is to really come up with constructive alternatives that make sense. I'll just give you an example. I mean, you know, poor South Africans are struggling to get food, access to food. School children in the public schools are not getting food. The opposition parties should hold government accountable to make certain that every child in school, and even if the child is not in school, if the child receives food before, you know, government food, the child, even if the child is at home, should still get food because, you know, the child in that household won't have food. I mean, another example is, you know, people are queuing for that social grant, the COVID-19 social grant. You know, there's so much red tape at the unemployment insurance funds and so much bureaucracy, you know, that, you know, people don't get that money on time. They're waiting, or when it's processed, it is wrongly processed and they don't get it. The opposition parties must be there